Most people didn't notice him. In fact, they hardly saw him at all. Just a mop, a faded uniform, and a quiet shuffle down the high school's glossy hallways. But if you looked a little closer, if you really paid attention, you'd see something far more extraordinary. You'd see a man with tired eyes that still held on to hope, calloused hands that had known the weight of both dreams and diapers, and a heart that beat not just for survival, but for his daughter. James Holloway was the janitor of Greenridge High in upstate New York. Every morning before sunrise, he walked the 5 blocks from his tiny 2-bedroom apartment to school, coffee in one hand, a half-washed Tupperware of his daughter's leftover breakfast in the other. Nobody ever asked how he was doing, and he never expected them to. But he still greeted everyone with a nod and a small smile, especially the kids who looked like they needed one most. It wasn't always this way. James used to wear a different kind of uniform. The proud kind. The kind that made people stop and thank you for your service. He'd spent 6 years in the Navy. But life, in its cruel indifference, had changed everything. His wife, Clara, passed away during childbirth with their second child. The baby didn't make it either. He'd been overseas when it happened. That was the day he hung up his uniform and picked up a mop. Now, every ounce of strength he had went to raising his daughter, Sophie. 10 years old, fiery and curious, she was the reason he kept breathing. That morning, James was mopping the gym floor after basketball practice when it happened. The door swung open hard, slamming against the wall. In strode a man wearing camo cargo pants, a black t-shirt that clung to muscles like armor, and a swagger that screamed combat veteran. Behind him, Coach Daniels followed awkwardly, glancing at James with an apologetic look. "Mr. Holloway," Coach said, "this is Travis Kane. He's a former Special Forces instructor, here to do a demo for our new student military preparedness program." James looked up from his mop and offered his hand. "Thanks for your service." Kane didn't shake it. He looked James up and down, then smirked. "You used to be in the Navy, right?" someone mentioned. James nodded slowly. "That's right. Guess we both took different paths after," Kane said, stepping into the gym like he owned it. "Some of us stayed in shape." The jab hit deeper than he expected, but James didn't react. He simply went back to cleaning, pretending not to hear the whispered laughter from a few students lingering in the corner. Later that afternoon, Kane's demonstration began. He wowed the students with martial arts moves, takedown drills, and stories of combat missions. The crowd was hooked. But then, something strange happened. In the middle of the gym, Kane turned to the students and said, "Let's have a little fun. Who wants to see me spar with someone?" Cheers erupted. Coach Daniels tried to intervene. "Travis, I don't know if..." "You," Kane said, pointing at James, who was wiping down a bench. The room went silent. James looked up, confused. "Me?" "Yeah," Kane said. "You said you were Navy. Let's see if you remember anything." There were chuckles now. Even some of the teachers weren't sure if this was a joke or a challenge. James stood still, caught between humility and pride. Every instinct told him to walk away. But then he looked at Sophie. She had slipped in through the gym doors to bring him his lunch, and she was watching with wide eyes. "All right," James said, stepping onto the mat. "But I'm not here to impress anyone." Kane smirked and nodded. "Try to keep up." The match began, and what followed left everyone speechless. James didn't fight like someone out of shape. He didn't throw wild punches or brag with flashy moves. He was calm. Controlled. Strategic. The man who had been overlooked and dismissed moved with the quiet skill of someone who had once disarmed enemies in the dark and saved lives with his bare hands. Kane lunged. James sidestepped. Kane tried to grapple. James countered and gently brought him to the mat. The room fell completely silent. James stood, offered Kane a hand, and helped him up. No smugness. No gloating. Just quiet strength. "That was unexpected," Kane said, genuinely out of breath. James shrugged. "You don't forget how to breathe. You just learn to do it quieter." Later, as the students filed out, several came up to him with admiration. "Mr. Holloway, that was awesome. You're like a real-life superhero." But the real moment came when Sophie hugged him tight and whispered, "Daddy, you're my hero every day." But now they all know it too. That night, something changed at Greenridge High. Students who had once passed him in silence now greeted him by name. A few even asked if he could teach them self-defense. James politely declined. He didn't need to be a hero to anyone else. But deep down, the kindness in their eyes reminded him that sometimes strength doesn't shout. Sometimes, it whispers through quiet resilience. The next morning, James Holloway walked into the school as usual, same mop bucket, same faint aroma of lemon-scented cleaner. But something felt different. Students waved at him in the hallway. One even offered to carry his mop. A senior football player clapped him on the back and said, "Respect, Mr. Holloway." Mad respect. And when James entered the gym to tidy up, he found a folded note on the bench. It read, "Thanks for reminding us that real strength is quiet. TK." He folded the note and tucked it into his wallet without a word. Later that week, Coach Daniels approached James with an idea. "We want to start an after-school mentorship club," he said. "Kids really connected with what you did, James. Not the sparring, well, yeah, the sparring too, but more than that. They saw something in you." Calm in the storm. "I'm just a janitor," James replied quietly, like it was a fact written in stone. Coach smiled. "You're a father. A veteran. A man who's been through the fire and didn't come out bitter. You're exactly what these kids need." James didn't answer right away. But that night, he sat with Sophie while she did her homework, and he thought about the faces of those kids who came up to him. The ones who needed someone to believe in them. He saw himself in them, young, angry, invisible. And he knew the answer. So the following Tuesday, the first meeting of the Quiet Strength Club took place in an unused classroom. 4 students showed up. 2 boys who were always in detention, 1 girl who barely spoke in class, and a freshman who wore long sleeves even in summer. James didn't lecture. He didn't tell war stories. He just listened. He talked about discipline and dignity, and how true strength was about protecting, not proving. By the 3rd week, the group had doubled. One day, even Travis Kane showed up, no black t-shirt or swagger, just jeans and a coffee mug. "I was thinking," Kane said after the session, "we got off on the wrong foot." James smiled slightly. "We both had something to prove, I guess." "Yeah," Kane said, scratching the back of his neck. "But what you're doing here, it's bigger than sparring. These kids need this. Mind if I help out sometimes?" James nodded. "Of course. We could use another calm presence." Kane chuckled. "Still not sure I qualify as calm, but I'll take it." The story might have ended there, quietly and beautifully, if it hadn't been for what happened a month later. It was the middle of December when Sophie came home from school with a strange look on her face. "Daddy," she said, "they were filming us at the club today." James raised an eyebrow. "Who was?" "Some guy with a camera. Said he was doing a story for Channel 6 News." Mr. Kane told him it was okay. James sighed. "I don't really want to be on TV." "I know," Sophie said. "But, it might help someone. Like you helped me." James didn't say anything. He just pulled her in for a hug. 3 days later, the segment aired. It started with footage of James cleaning the hallway, set to soft music. A voiceover explained how a quiet janitor had unintentionally sparked a school-wide transformation. Then it cut to students, some laughing, some in tears, sharing what the Quiet Strength Club meant to them. "He listens when no one else does. He taught me how to breathe through anxiety. He told me I didn't have to be like my dad to be a man." Then came the moment that made the internet explode. A clip of James sparring with Kane, slow motion, graceful, powerful. But then it shifted to James sitting in the classroom, a circle of kids around him, Sophie leaning against his shoulder. And a quote in white letters appeared on the screen. "True strength is when you can break someone, but choose to heal instead." By morning, the video had over 2 million views. Messages poured in from all over the country. A teacher from Ohio wrote, "We started a Quiet Strength chapter in our school today. Thank you, Mr. Holloway." A combat veteran from Canada commented, "Watching this made me want to be a better father." You've given me hope. A single mother from London said, my son was bullied. Now he walks taller. Because of your story. And then came the letter that changed everything. It was from the State Education Board. They were starting a pilot program to fund mentorship initiatives in schools, and they wanted James to lead the effort. They offered to pay for his teacher certification. He could keep working at Greenridge, but as a mentor. An educator. A guide. James cried for the first time in years when he read the letter. That night, he and Sophie sat on the worn old couch in their apartment, eating spaghetti and watching the sunset through the window. She looked at him with those big brown eyes and said, "You always said mopping the floors was your way of helping people." He nodded. "Well," she said, twirling her spaghetti, "maybe now you get to clean up more than floors." James chuckled. "Guess I do, kiddo." And from that day on, the janitor who once blended into the background became a beacon for everyone who had ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated. Because what happened next wasn't a viral video, or a news story, or even a sparring match that made people gasp. It was this. A kid who had planned to run away from home didn't. A girl who had been silently battling depression asked for help. A young man who thought kindness was weakness held the door open for a stranger and said, "Thank you," for the first time in months. And somewhere, in a quiet classroom in a small town, a former janitor smiled, not because he became famous, but because he helped one person choose hope over fear. And that made all the difference.